Spawning over here in the bottom left-hand position of Daybreak, ladies and gentlemen, as the green Protoss player, we have a favorite among fans worldwide. Huge following from Warcraft 3, trying to emulate his success there in StarCraft 2. Will he be able to do it and come back from this deficit? It is Grubby. And his opponent spawning in the top right position as the red Zerg player, ladies and gentlemen, winner of the Finland WCS Nationals, but will he be able to close this out 2-0 against his illustrious opponent over here? We have, representing Mouse Sports, Protosser. This is going to be pretty interesting stuff. I'm not really sure what strategies are going to come out in game number 2 here. That game number 1 started as a fairly typical PvZ, but then evolved into something else entirely when Grubby went for a lot of Stargate units with those Phoenixes. Wasn't able to get too much damage done because Protosser was able to scout the Stargate in time and get those Spore Crawlers up. And then the follow-up link push from Protosser just denying the third base and taking out a couple of Immortals from Grubby, and rather than fight it out to the very end, Grubby went, well, that was my potential advantage. It's now completely disappeared and I'm now at a healthy disadvantage. I think it's best to GG. I think he could have tapped out a little bit later because I don't think the game was 100% lost for him at that point, but certainly it was very difficult and perhaps he was thinking of preserving his strength for this particular game. In the meantime, the pool has gone down for Protosser here in game number 2. Let's see what he ends up doing here with his newfound glory. He is 1-0 up, of course, so sometimes players let the nerves get to them when they are 1-0 up in a series, and they think because they're on the verge of victory, they might try something fancy, but what you need to do is just keep calm and do what you do best. And it looks like this time around, we actually have the Nexus first coming out of Grubby, coming back to put the Forge down at his main base once again like last time, so he's probably going to be walling off with a couple of gateways. The difference on a map like Daybreak is that it's a lot more difficult to wall off this huge area over here compared to Ohana, where you just need a couple of buildings. So we're going to be seeing a much larger wall off from our Protoss player here. And let's see if the Zerg is able to take advantage of that going into the mid game. That is a classic example of one of the ways that races can try and exploit this map. Zerg's really taking advantage, maybe using Banelings, for example, to bust down walls. We've seen that happen before on Daybreak. It doesn't happen in every game, of course, but it could potentially do so here. Protosser doing a good scout, 4 pylons around the edge of his bases, and now going to be moving a drone down to the third, where there is actually a probe from Grubby checking things out, and he's in fact going to be putting down a pylon. Now, there are only 2 Zerglings out at the moment for Protosser, and that's actually important because 2 Zerglings don't actually kill a pylon fast enough. You need 2 Zerglings. There we go. 4 Zerglings tends to be the bomb there, and we are going to be getting that crucial number of units required to force a cancel on that pylon early and therefore not have too much of a delay on the third hatchery. In the meantime, the Cybernetics Core are going to be made part of this wall-off simply because Grubby won't have enough buildings to do so if he doesn't. Going to be putting another pylon down, and presumably another gateway will go down there in the near future. So things beginning to look fairly normal. In the meantime, let's take a look at what's going on up here. Not too much going on. We don't see additional tech coming out at this time for Grubby. And let's take a look. Nope, not too much going on there either. It looks like both sides are just really trying to macro up to their heart's content. And I've just been corrected by someone in the chat. Thank you very much for pointing that out. I was casting those finals as well, so I really should know this. So my apologies, that obviously slipped my mind. Protosser did not win WCS Finland. Thank you very much for that. I was thinking of a lower bracket game where he won and was able to get to Europe. So maybe I was confusing that with winning it. But very well pointed out. I'm really glad I read the chat there. So thank you very, very much to Rakusu, who pointed that out. But I believe Protosser was eventually taken out in a one-basing game as well. And he was actually exhibiting some ridiculously good play in that tournament. So nonetheless, I'm still looking out for him to do very well here. And he is currently 1 game up against Grubby. So we'll see what happens here. We do have Grubby with the robotics facility at his natural expansion. Going to be taking both of those gases there as well. So he's going up to all 4 gas. And Protosser has overlords absolutely everywhere. There is nothing that Grubby can do that Protosser can't see at the moment, which is absolutely fantastic for him. Pylon going down there in the corner, so no more hidden tech. And Protosser knows exactly everything that Grubby is doing here in game number 2. In the meantime, continuing to macro up. The worker count, by the way, is 45 to 53 in favor of our Zerg player at the moment. He is currently grabbing his lair, not at his main base, though. He's going to be grabbing it at his natural expansion, along with the Roach War. And perhaps he feels it's just a little bit more defensible. Doesn't want any War Prisms coming in with some Zealots, for example, and picking apart this hatchery a little bit later. So he's going to keep it at his central hatchery so that he has the maximum notice possible if any harassment comes in. In the meantime, we see at the Forge, we have a +1 armor being chrono boosted out because +1 attack has just finished from Grubby. Going to be finishing up that Wart Gate research, and it looks like 4 gateways on the way, and Grubby taking a 3rd Nexus here as well. So not typically the timing we would see. Protosser might try and abuse this a little bit, and look at that, the Overlord coming by, seeing the 3rd Nexus, and then immediately moving out. Doesn't want Grubby to know that he has seen it, and now I think Protosser might be looking to mount an attack perhaps against the 3rd base. Let's see what he ends up trying to do here. We have a Twilight Council and a Robotics Bay going down now for Grubby as well. He's currently at 68 supply versus the 93 of Protoss. He's got Metabolic Boost and Glial Reconstitution on the way, so he could be going for an absolutely huge timing here at the 3rd. It looks like these Slowlings might be able to get a surround off on the Zealot, but the Stalker is going to be able to successfully get away, and he won't get a surround on the Zealot if he unfortunately just keeps doing that. He needs to be very, very careful with the way he manages his units, but fortunately this Zealot, it looks like, is going to go down anyway. Not too much of a hassle, and a War Prism coming into the main base with some Zealots, forcing the evacuation of drones there from Protosser. The macro hatchery looks like it's going to get cancelled, and the hatch in the main looking like it's in a little bit of trouble as well. A lot of roaches coming up, but is it going to be enough? The hatchery now at about 40% health and falling. The Zealots are approximate. Oh, very, very nice micro there. Grubby picking units up into the War Prism, and yes, he's going to be able to get the main hatchery, but the macro hatch is going to stay alive. The Broodlings going to be able to finish off the rest of this attack, but the War Prism does get away scot-free. So that is what Grubby really needed to keep this 3rd base up and mining. He's now going to be getting a couple of cannons there just to make sure he might be immune to any sort of counterattack. Protoss is sending a lot of roaches out there, but we have a War Prison coming back in, and this is why, by the way, guys, the lair was built at the natural expansion. We were just saying that a little bit earlier, and Grubby now trying to make an example of exactly why that is the case. The roaches now going to be moving up to the main base, and this time no additional hatcheries are going to get destroyed. Grubby, though, sitting there pretty with his War Prism. There's no queen there to harass this War Prism as it currently stands, and it's getting really frustrating for Protosser right now. So let's see what Grubby will be able to do with this War Prism. Now moving down to the natural expansion. All the roaches are in the main. Oh dear, will he be able to get a decent number of units out? And there we go, dropping the Sentry and the Zealot. Really, really nice force field, trying to prevent the drones from getting out there, but I think a decent enough number of roaches will be able to repel this. Where are the queens? We need a decent number out on the map here to try and prevent that War Prism coming out. There are 3 of them, but they're obviously all stuck somewhere else as it currently stands. There we go, there's one at the 3rd base, and we have another one by the macro hatch, so I'm guessing Protosser will be able to remake those relatively quickly indeed, but the War Prism is still alive, and Grubby just holding off very, very well while he continues to macro up off of all of this. He is getting Colossi now. He's getting +2 attack and extended thermal lance. More gateways going down at the 3rd base as well, and his economy is looking very, very good. And look at this army. Pretty scary stuff. A lot of force fields in there. We have Immortals, we have Colossi, and only now are we researching pathogen glands from Protosser. So Grubby really keeping his opponent on his toes in this particular game as all of those upgrades get chrono boosted out. We even have Blink on the way for him as well. And here we go, War Prism now going to the 4th base location, and it looks like the War Prism will escape via the high ground to fight another day. But really, this little guy here has done so much for Grubby this particular game. Protosser might have mounted an attack against the 3rd, but that is definitely unlikely now. And Grubby, wow, very unorthodox move here, going for the destructible rocks in the center of the map. This is not normally something we see until the very, very, very late game, when one side is really confident they can remax and take out the other no matter what. So the fact that Grubby is taking out these rocks now is very significant. I think he wants to try and win the game with this push, because if he doesn't and Protosser is able to counterattack, he's going to have a very short route through to Grubby's base because those rocks have been destroyed, and that will be very, very significant. That's what makes this battle all the more entertaining. The force fields are a little bit late. A lot of Lings get through, but it looks like they get cleaned up by the Colossus before too much damage is done, and Grubby now has a nice little cubby hole in the Protosser natural. Sorry, I keep saying Protoss natural. It really isn't. And excellent force fields. A little late on the initial Zerglings, but only taking apart the shields, so he can afford to make that mistake right now. And an additional Colossus on the way too. It looks like Protosser here is going to have significant trouble holding off this push, and that would be why Grubby decided to go with those destructible rocks out in the center of the map. Protosser gives the GG, and Grubby fights back to level the series 1-all. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to be getting into game number 3 between Grubby and Protosser straight after this break. I wonder what the map's going to be. Stay tuned, and we'll be right back.